We got started from running a summer camp. Running a summer camp is really great, a really great way to start working with kids because there are no stakes. No one expects anything particular to happen at summer camp. If you want to work with kids in an educational setting and you want to make it up as you go along, starting a school is a terrible idea. And starting a summer camp is a really good one because parents will drop their kids off expecting them to do anything, and the kids will come back filled with exciting things that they did in the present. Whoa, that's so amazing, you did something incredible. Whereas if they dropped their kids off at school and they spent all day building with Legos and making an interesting Rube Goldberg machine, they might say, why are you not teaching my child math? And you might have an answer to that, but you may probably want to prepare the answer to that over time. So this picture here, I chose specifically for us because it doesn't particularly look like Hackerspace. What we're having here is morning meeting. This is at summer camp. We have a morning meeting every day. We also run after school programs. Currently we also run a homeschool resource center / school alternative, which is a 9 to 3 Monday through Thursday program that basically fits the school slot. But again, we start the day with morning meeting. We have the middle of the day with morning meeting. It is iconic to me because what we are doing, in addition to running, a space for kids to make things, is we are in fact creating a community. We had this notion that if there was a space where kids and families who are interested in building could come and do stuff, they would come, and then a community would exist around that. And that community didn't exist in Somerville before we started doing this because the space didn't happen. It didn't provide the ability for that to happen. The way we got to doing building this community was through things like after school, also doing open shop things, but programs that slot very readily into things that parents and families and kids are already doing. I'm going to send my kid to the Hackerspace is not a normal sentence, but I'm going to send my kid to summer camp is a normal sentence. And so while at this point, after 3 years of doing things, we are basically running programs almost all of the time where kids can come, and sometimes adults as well, come and make things either in the context of structured classes or whatever they want. So we are in effect running a space where someone could just show up and work on projects. We still continue to have these very strict labels that fit into slots that are understandable. And being legible to the outside world was really, really important to us. And partly that was a big realization to us because we came from a open source, free software, anarchist collective hackerspace community, and not a kids, families, education one. We're we don't need to be more normal, but we need to explain ourselves using the word the.
Does anyone have a question for Andy?
Or Will?
Oh, sorry. I just have a question for Andy. Anyway. Sorry, thanks, Will. And can everyone hear everything, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So does anyone have a question for Will? Well, then you must have been so very clear. Then moving on to Francesca.
So I'm coming about this a little differently. We actually have a space in a school. And the way we came about this, I'm at the United Nations International School. It's a K-12 independent school in New York City. And I am a teacher there. I'm a technology integrator for the kindergarten through 4th grade. And last year, we had a computer lab, and it had 21 desktops, and it was never used, ever. It was an empty space, which was going to be taken away by the administration for another classroom. And I was really fighting for that not to happen. So I was lucky enough to have the buy-in of a great administrator and a parent community who was willing to put some backing into it. So we got our first maker bots, and we needed space to put those. So we had, and then we got a grant from the parents basically to redesign the space over the summertime. And we came up and we have a collaboratory, which is a space for the K through 12 students to come in and build. And we have everything ranging from robotics parts to soft circuitry to mazes. We went one-to-one. We're starting to go one-to-one, and we saved all the boxes of our laptops, and so we have lots and lots of boxes which have been reused and repurposed for many mazes. So that's what's happening in the space right now. This is the first year it's been there. And now I think that what we're really working is to really try to integrate making with the teaching and the curriculum that's already out there. So, for example, if the 4th grade has in a curriculum unit studying of exploration and explorers, how can I create a maker unit, because this is a school, and if I want the kids to come to me once a week for an hour, I need to show that there is a connection, not just to making, which is important in of itself for creative computing classes, but also to what's happening in the classroom. So we try to create projects that can combine the two. So use your hands, build, but also learn about exploration. An example that was out there that I really liked. So I think that having the way we started was knowing that there was a change happening in education, and having a school that was willing to put the space there, and having teachers there who could populate it with stuff. So one of my challenges is finding materials, and I always, whenever I go to conferences like this, I look and I see these awesome materials and how are we going to use this. And, I'm not trained as an engineer. I'm trained as a personal librarian and then as a computer teacher. So it was interesting for me to make that shift. I do buy all this material. Like wanted to buy, for example, I bought conductive tape and conductive copper tape. But I didn't know that the adhesive had to be conductive as well, because there is copper tape that does not have conductive adhesive on it. Spent a lot of money on tape that, so if anybody has any ideas of what to do with non-adhesive copper wire tape. So those are the kind of challenges that I'm finding, but it's really exciting, and it's really nice to be able to work. I go to grade level meetings with the teachers, first, second, third, fourth, and we talk about what's happening in the curriculum, and then we brainstorm about ideas and how to integrate the making with what's happening in the classroom.
Anyone have any questions for Francesca?
Also, I have a suggestion for the copper tape.
Great. Thank you.
A staple, if you punch a staple through the copper tape, that will bridge so you have 2 layers of copper tape, right? You want to bridge the 2. Putting a single staple through tends to do the trick. So it's not all for naught.
Okay.
And you can also, this is unintentional.
Awesome. Thank you.
So that's a plug for that.
Is there any source of kind of resources? I mean, you mentioned what sounds like a pretty ad hoc methodology for establishing activities that you're going to populate this makerspace. I'd love to hear from all you guys what resources you go to, or if there's mentoring available for folks who maybe don't have that engineering prowess.
Well, I think there's a lot of blogs out there and resources now that are starting to appear, like, what you need for your perfect makerspace, ranging from hardware to software to peopleware. And I think that I just read there's a new manual for
There's
spaces.
a playbook.
Playbook, yes.
Maker playbook that's out.
Somebody's just come out with that.
Online.
But yeah, I think that, but then you get new materials, so depending on what you go to these conferences.
That part of our long-term plans is to share all of our stuff that works. And we're going to turn, like, our toy hacking event, we're going to write a document on how to run a toy hack. And do that with a whole bunch of different activities so that we can share and help other people do that. So
I recommend Google Plus. There are a lot of great communities on there, and they do quick hangouts. Like Make a Team has a lot of great hangouts on learning about 3D printers to, how do I solder, whatever. So I think that's one of the best resources out there, also to connect with other people in the community. There's also, some of the celebrity makers out there are doing a lot better job of sharing as well. So for example, Adafruit, they have a learning section. SparkFun has learn.sparkfun.edu or something like that. So more and more people are sharing now all the work they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I would also add that the most amazing, useful resources are the people in your community, and I guarantee you that you know someone who wants to teach kids an awesome technical skill.
Tweet it out.
Yeah. We've got lots of volunteers and teachers from the local hackerspaces around.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah, tap the hackerspaces for
Yeah.
sure.
Steve, you want,
Oh, I was just going to ask similarly, are you sharing the curriculum that you've created for each of the projects that go
I
with each of the
need to.
grades?
That's one of the things I find that, I haven't had time to do, but that's in the works. It's one of my actually official goals of the year, so it'll come up. But yeah, I think that's, connecting into the curriculum is something that for schools is really important, especially if you want your administration to buy into it. Because like I remember you were saying that, it is still a formalized environment.
Yep, my name is Steve Curie. I'm here from the Detroit Public Library, and we have a teen center at our main library, which has been in existence since 2008. And we're always looking at ways we can get the teens involved in working on things. And one of the first things we did was crafting, just traditional crafting. And we partnered with Handmade Detroit, which is a crafting collective in our area. And we worked on knitting, and we worked on jewelry making, and then in 2010, Maker Faire Detroit came to our area, and we participated in that, and all the teens' minds were just blown by all the cool stuff going on, and my mind was blown too, and we wanted to see how we could get making into our teen center. So what I did was I started talking with Jeff, who had a local makerspace, and wanted to use their experience and knowledge so we wouldn't make mistakes that they had already made. And we started talking about how we could get a makerspace up and running. And then a grant opportunity came about, and that's how we got ours started. Our teens, this is a picture of our electronics workshop where the teens play with electronics and see what kind of noises and sounds they can get out of them. So I would say partnering with local groups is the best way to do it. We partner with a local bike shop for a bike program. A lot of our teens ride their bikes to our libraries, so that's something that helps them right away. Like Will said, saying I'm going to send my kid to a hackerspace isn't something you hear a lot of parents saying right now. So we think that a library acts as a good place for a makerspace or hackerspace to take place because it's already established in the community respects it and trusts it. So if you are looking for a partner or a place to start a makerspace in your area, I would say maybe look to your local library and see if they are thinking of it. A lot of libraries are. It's a very big topic in libraries right now. And our teams have really enjoyed it. We've been open since June of 2012, and the original grant that got us started, our administration liked it so much, we're now part of the general budget, so we're self-sustaining now, although we are looking for additional grants to go out and add more. But some people question, is a makerspace, something that should be in a library? And we talked about learning all sorts of different literacies for the modern world and understanding the world around you. And our teams, we work with 3D printing and robotics and Arduino and all these things that maybe they would have learned in school in previous times in the shop class, but they just don't get now. And our teams really feel accomplished when they work in our workshops. They learn and they teach their peers. They show everything to adults that come in. So it's just, they get so much out of it, and for a relatively little investment in the grand scheme of our budget. So we really enjoy working on it. And I only work with teens because I work in our teen center, but our administration is looking at expanding it to all ages, and that's something that we are researching where and how to do currently. Any questions? Yes?
Yeah, as much as I hate to admit it, liability is a part of this. How do you guys handle that?
Yep, it is. It's something that we've discussed. The most dangerous thing that we do is soldering. And soldering, if you look at middle school science classes, they're working with Bunsen burners. What we do is we just teach the kids safety precautions and keep an eye on them. We have had, in our 9 months of existence, have had no incidents other than 2 burn marks on the table, which I like to refer to as beauty marks because it shows that we're actually doing something. If we move into like laser cutting, where we have like real industrial equipment going on, then we're going to need to look at, maybe an insurance rider, definitely some better ventilation. Those are discussions that have begun with our administration and facilities groups, but that we have not had to finalize a solution on yet because we just don't have those. But again, the soldering, it's one of those things where it's dangerous, but there's a lot of dangerous things out there.
The insurance companies don't really worry about the soldering. It's the saws that they care about.
Yeah, well, you're part of the school system too. If it's a private or in your home,
Yeah.
that's a different situation. Like, I don't know how, you guys handle that.
And we actually, it was surprisingly easy. We let the kids use table saws, drill presses, routers, and all kinds of potentially very dangerous things. And we have very specific rules around power tools and fire that we have posted everywhere that volunteers all are trained in and know about, the kids all know about. And we keep them separate room. And our insurance company was not bothered at all by this.
So
You
you
should all
are
move to
sure.
Canada. It's like, that's not the same story I have at all. What's yours? Well, Jeff actually put me in touch with an insurance agent that works with Tech Shop, for those that are familiar with Tech Shop. And we have a lot of insurance. And the biggest concerns are sawdust, because what we do a lot of woodworking in our space, so really making sure you maintain this, figure out the sawdust and get it out of there as soon as possible. Fire hazard, they definitely care about saws. We had this amazing vintage DeWalt radial arm saw that was donated to us, and they were not happy about that, so we had to give it away. They're happier with miter saws, but still not very happy. Definitely don't like hand saws. They're not worried about things like hot glue guns and soldering irons, as long as there are notes up that say, hey, beware, this is hot. We have liability forms stuck on the outside of our space. We have everybody sign them that comes into our space. We have a very good lawyer. I'm like, yeah, I definitely moving to Canada now. The thing is, it's so different because for the maker spaces, I feel then like the hacker spaces, which are primarily adults, where they kind of are a little bit more loose about a lot of things. And then so you get into the world of, now there's kids in this space, and there's a lot more expectations around things, like not just, because obviously you want things to be safer, so you go down all that path of what does that mean, and it ends up being very
Where are
scary.
you here?
Los Angeles, downtown.
You're just a makerspace and independent,
Yeah, we're a makerspace, yeah.
not a school or a
Yep,
library.
we're a nonprofit.
It's a good segue into your introduction.
There you go. Are you done?
Any more questions? Or
How many full-time staff do you have to run the operation? And I presume you have a lot of volunteers, but I'm just curious as to who you're paying on the payroll for this thing.
we pay outside. We do 5 workshops currently. We pay an instructor for each of those $25 per hour or $50 for the typical 2-hour session. Then they also get a team who acts as an assistant, and the team is paid $8 per hour or $16 for the session. And then we have our library staff. There are 4 full-time people in the teen center that I work in, including me, but we are considered part of the children's library, so we have all the children's staff. So we have a pretty good pool of people to pull from. We like 2 to 3 staff members to be in the teen center at any one time, not including the instructor and his or her assistant. So there should be at least 4 people of a supervisory role in the teen center at any one time when a workshop is going on. And most of the workshops are not too dangerous. The soldering ones are our most dangerous, and we just keep a close watch on it. It's rarely happened, but occasionally we have had teens that have started, playing around or just not being as committed to safety as they should be, and then we pull them off the stations and say, you're done until you realize what you have to do. But that's only happened a couple times.
How big are your class sizes typically?
We typically get 8 to 15, depending on what it is. I can talk a little bit about our workshops later, but it depends on the workshop. At 8 to 15, and we can't, in our current size, can't handle much more than 15 just because of our space.
Thanks.
Roughly a budget you guys have?
We started with a grant of $30,000. We currently have an annual budget of $11,000, but then we're also getting more grants with that.
We have a $5,000 supply budget per year, just for non-big supplies, not like, vinyl cutter or make block, but just basic supplies, $5,000 a year.
Yeah, the 11,000 covers instructors and just materials to do the workshops, but no big equipment purchases. Yes.
Sorry, this is a follow-up to the question of program attendance. So like over, so you're talking about it like over a year or two? How long a period did that come on? Just a year?
Oh, the 11,000? That's for 1 year.
Okay, and how many programs did you say?
We do 5 programs a week.
Oh, okay. So like, you're saying 7 to 15 several times a week?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just because Steve and I work together a little bit, to speak to that a little bit, that all depends on the hourly wage you're paying people. So a lot of what Steve's talking about, if I'm accurate, is part-time people coming in and offering classes for an hourly wage. So that doesn't include the full-time staff that is managing it. So some people do have full-time or part-time staff. I'm full-time staff, you're only full-time staff person, so my budget is vastly different from that. If anyone's full-time, it would be the most expensive part of their budget, probably. But,
and I was asking just about public libraries, just as far as like, how many people are you serving for this? So that was just, thanks for that.
Yeah.
An interesting thing about staffing too, you urged me to have to make it full-time and staff. I was expecting at first to have to hire some full-time teachers, that was what they would want and need in order to have sort of consistent employment. But I've actually found that it's been great having teachers that just plug into a box. They're interested in some topic, they're really into electronics and wearables, and that's what they want to teach, and they can teach that one class, and they're finding other employment for other stuff.
Yeah, we tend to work with like artists and painters and like freelance web programmers and people who have flexible schedules because that is the life they want. And so yeah, they are interested in working a couple hours a week with kids, but it's not that they don't want to do full time.
I think Kylie has that question.
Yeah, I was wondering if you guys could talk a little bit about sources of funding, because I know you guys have been pretty creative about raising funds for your sites, so I think tips and tricks might be really applicable to the audience.
So Sarah, maybe if you want to hold in your intro to answering that question.
Okay, so I'll give you guys exactly how we started our makerspace. My husband started Crash Space, which was one of the first hackerspaces in Los Angeles, and it's for adults only. And so around that time that it started, we actually had our son, and I really wanted to hang out at the hackerspace with bring him. So I thought, well, I'm sure I'm not the only mom that wants to have a space so they can go and tinker and work on awesome projects. So I wrote a blog post and put it out there and just said, hey, if anybody else wants to start a kid-friendly hackerspace, let's meet up. So we met. I had, I think, 25 people showed up at Crash Space, and we discussed what it would mean to start a hackerspace in LA. Where in LA? LA is very large, so there's like a lot of people's opinions, west side versus east side. And so from there, we just started meeting every 2 weeks. We had a planning group that started, and we meet every 2 weeks in different spots around LA. So we, I think one of the first places we met was downtown. I think Nirvana was there at that one, and part of the reason we decided to move to different spots around LA was to figure out who kind of shows up at the different areas in LA, so that would help us make our decision. And then we also, during that time, we started putting on events. And I think that's actually one of the best things that we did was to put on events, just so it's before we committed to having our own space to make sure people would show up at these events and also figure out what kinds of events to put on. So we put on Mozilla was having their summer food party, so we did this big youth hack jam. I think 120 people showed up. We did that at a school, a private school. We did a liquid nitrogen ice cream party. We did that at a theater, 24th Street Theater. We also did some other things there. We had like squishy circuits, and we did other sort of like food science hacking, and that was really popular. I think we had more than 50 people show up for that one, maybe 70. So also during this time, we also were able to identify folks that seemed like they'd be really good at instructing or mentoring and all that. So we kind of sort of making our pool of folks bigger and bigger and bigger. We used meetup.com. That was really effective to sort of schedule these events. And then at one of the planning meetings, somebody showed up and said, hey, at LA Mart, which is in downtown LA, it's a gift and furniture showroom, they're turning the entire 11th floor into this community tech art space. And they're looking for folks like you to take one of the spaces and use it for something interesting. And also we'll give you a deal and they'll give you like 8 months free rent. I was like, that is awesome. And they actually met all of our requirements. It's really important to really think through the requirements for your space. And so I knew that I wanted at least 2,000 square feet because I've visited a lot of hacker spaces. And you can definitely do things in small areas, but for all the different activities that we wanted to do, it was important for us to have a large enough space that we could also sort of break things away apart. So like we have our woodworking, laser cutting area separate from our main space, which is important for a lot of different reasons that these guys have already covered. And it had like a freight elevator, so it's easy for us to bring up large pieces of wood and large furniture and equipment and stuff. So that was really important. It's also near Metro, near Central Library. We do a lot of things with Central Library. So like I would help Spark Fund there, teach a bunch of librarians how to use Arduino. I've spoken to actually all the LA librarians at Central Library about starting makerspaces. We have a very close connection with librarians. It sounds like a lot of people here are interested in that. They come to our makerspace actually to learn how to start one in their library. So as a resource, again, if you have other spaces like ours in your cities and your librarian, go check out those spaces because you'll probably be very inspired for your own. So we got the space, we started putting on some events there, and then we did a Kickstarter campaign, and we raised, I think it was $34,000 through Kickstarter. And so the rewards were everything from memberships to classes. Mark Braunfelder did an Arduino class for us. If you guys are familiar with Make Magazine and Boing Boing, it's kind of a big deal. And so we had a combination of other things like Citizen Science Group and the Interstellar Hitchhiker Makers Group and all these different types of rewards, which also again helped us sort of figure out what people were interested in. The money went towards buying a laser cutter, 3D printers, and 2 staff that would be in the space on Saturdays and Sundays because it was really important as all of us were volunteers, so I knew that there'd be someone accountable and responsible to be in the space on Saturdays and Sundays and they'd have all the right training. So we officially opened on February 2nd, and we did that with a big grand opening party. It was a robot party. We had 200 people show up. It was awesome. We really rely heavily on businesses and organizations outside our space to put on classes and events in our space. So we had the robotics club, even like private and for-profit and not-profit organizations. A lot of the times they don't charge us; they're just happy because it's outreach for them too. So that's really important. Like our Citizen Science Group, we work with Caltech, we work with the Tokyo Hackerspace, we work with SafeCast, which is a nonprofit organization. The Interstellar Hitchhiker Makers Group, we're doing tours of JPL and SpaceX and XCore and Virgin, all this stuff. Like I feel like we're a very LA space because we also do filmmaking and all these other things that make, I think, local is really important for your makerspace. So although there's all like the general stuff you do, thinking about like what your community is super into because it goes to, well, how do I make this just something I'm going to do, not what a hackerspace, but yeah, I'm totally into film, or I'm totally into making this awesome pellet furniture because I'm all about sustainability. 500,000 pellets are made, in the United States every year. So it's just thinking about that. I think is really important. And then the last thing is like again, outreach. It's really hard for us right now to go into all these other external spaces. To work with them, but we want to, and we definitely want to bring more of them into our space. So I hope that helps you guys.
So just before, thanks, Tara. I'm wondering if, so I was going to go around and talk about activities, but rather than do that, I'd sort of like to ask the audience, since we're hopefully providing information to you, maybe show of hands, who would rather we talk about nuts and bolts stuff and just take questions for the rest of the 20 minutes? Or would you rather that we go through the activities and then take questions? So if you want more nuts and bolts and just question and answer starting now, please raise your hand. Or if you want more talk about activities and stuff, raise your hand. Okay, good. So the plan is sound. That sounds good. Cool. So, Tara, thanks. And then what I think we'll do now is we'll start over and go around and talk about activities that we do in the space. So I'll actually start very quickly. I'm at the Mount Elliott Makerspace, and one of the activities that we started to do, I'll actually scroll back to one of these things. There we go. So we're actually starting to mess around, inspired by the Power Wheels Rally, which is a rally started at Detroit Maker Faire, where people actually started by a hackerspace in Chicago, where people modify Power Wheels and turn them kind of into their own custom race cars. And it's since become less Power Wheels and more like modified golf carts, because they're pretty fast now and almost on the bordering on dangerous. But you can, what we've started to do is we've started to take over mobility scooters that are broken and giving kids the opportunity to hack them, but with smaller batteries and more manageable parts, so that A, they are safe, and B, that nobody will, you can't really blow anything up that's expensive. I mean, some of these scooters are expensive, but if they're broken anyways, well, hopefully we'll fix them, and at the very worst, we'll break them more. And it works out really well. This is actually the scene of an accident. So they did run into each other, but not very fast. So if you buy like small alarm batteries instead of the larger batteries, then they'll just crash into each other, and it'll be low-speed collision. And then they're asked to do much better in the future, and they can't use it for the rest of the day, maybe, depending on how that accident occurred. But that's one activity that we do. And just to speak quickly about fundraising and resources. So I view kind of the fundraising thing as 4 different categories. There's government funding, of which maybe perhaps there's minimal, but right now there's a group called IMLS, which is partnered with MacArthur, and they run a Learning Labs in Libraries and Museums program. So if you Google IMLS Learning Labs, something will come up. I'm going to do a lot of, if you Google this, something will happen. And also Cognizant, which is an IT services company, has their Making the Future program. They funded myself, Steve, and I believe now Tara's Makerspace. So they have a funding program, and if you'd like to see the budget for that, for Steve's program, it is on the Mount Elliott Makerspace website on the How to Make a Makerspace link. So you can download that, and you can kind of like Abby Hoffman steal this book, steal this budget. Like spreadsheets are one of my favorite tools.
Crazy ass spreadsheet.
Other than screwdrivers. I also have a spreadsheet for making granola. If you want to compare the cost of granola, that's different. So that's useful. And then if you think of government funding and then private, that's kind of private company funding. So partnering with private companies, I think, is one thing. Private individuals, asking people, they'll do money, give you money for that. And I think the other one is market-based, selling products and services, selling memberships. I think the hackerspace model, in my mind, is probably the best model, where you get a bunch of people together, you share upfront all of the costs, and you say, we need to support this, and can you plunk down a chunk of money to start things up?
I had a hard time with that one.
Yeah. So in Detroit, I actually had an easier time doing that than I thought. So I got a bunch of people deploying up between $500 and $1,000 to start, not a youth makerspace, but a hackerspace. And we started with a pot of about $4,000, and